Hello everyone and welcome to this week's episode of the Corporate Escapists TV show. I am your host Christine Innes and I am super excited to have the most lovely woman that I know, Barbie, to come and join us today. And I can't wait for the conversation that we're going to have and really talk about how you left, like quite a, real corporate type role and really took quite a big change in your career. So thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
Do you want to start by just telling people a little bit about yourself and, really, what was the transition that you made and what you are doing right now?
Sure. Well, a little bit about my corporate background. I look a little bit corporate today only because I've been out, so I don't always dress like this. Anyway, I've sort of gone that way. I have to say, when I was in architecture and international sports management, I couldn't wear my hair like this. It was very low-waved, and we had tiny little chains and tiny little earrings, all that. So I don't have to do that anymore. It's so fantastic. But yes, my background was architecture. I was in architecture for 17 years. And then I made a big transition because we had a recession we had to have in the late 80s and there was no work for architects. And I've been a meditator nearly all my life, not in my adult life, not my early life. And I just sat down in my lounge room and actually put out exactly what I wanted in workplaces. We're still talking corporate. So in my workplace. So I actually put out that I wanted to travel on a plane. I wanted to be in board meetings. Why I did, I want to choose that, but I did, all those things. And I actually ended up with everything that I put out, which was ending up being the national manager for the Australian Baseball Federation, would you believe? So I went from architecture, which was very conservative, to the Australian Baseball Federation. And so in that corporate life, I did get exactly what I put out. I was forever on a plane. I was forever in board meetings because I was part with my CEO, part of raising the sponsorship for the federation to filter down through the earlier younger teams. So that was my corporate life. And in being in that, just also in my background, which might help others if they understand this, I was brought up in a large family, had a very powerful father, very loving, powerful father, who always used to say to the 2 girls and 5 boys that you could do anything you wanted if you put your mind to it. So he didn't actually differentiate between the girls and the boys. I think probably in their male background they probably still did, but his encouragement was that. So I was brought up in quite a strong male environment. Also being the female with my mother was very feminine and all that sort of stuff. But I think being brought up in a male environment gave me that tenaciousness and that strength in actual fact to make quite a few decisions in my life. Like some of them weren't all that great in my earlier life, but I think that was the female side of me came out a little bit too much there. But anyway, that's another story. But so that was my corporate background. And so I was forever traveling overseas. We used to get sponsorship for Major League Baseball. So you can imagine sitting around a boardroom with all those men, heads of baseball teams and trying to get money out of them and all those other sort of things. But in my working life, in architecture and in international sports management, I was always the second one down. There was always the CEO and there was always the directors and all that sort of stuff. And they loved me to death because I was very, competent. I could actually do things and make them look fantastic. So, and then, you get to a certain point, and this was in actual fact the big thing. I was coming back from New York after being in New York for a while, sort of doing, beating around, sort of trying to get sponsorship. And it was tough. It was really tough. I mean, people get caught up with all this travel, but, if you traveled a lot with your job, being in a hotel room on your own, even though sometimes it was a cognac in the bath and all that sort of stuff, but relaxing after an incredible meeting. But it's a very solo way because there's no one really that you can talk to it about once you come back to your hotel room. And being a woman, it was fine for breakfast, but in my day, it might be better now, but in my day, going down to a restaurant on your own overseas, just didn't quite work. So it was always having, dinner in your room.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to the change. I was getting to near 50, and I'm much older than that now, but anyway, that's another thing too. And I was coming back on the plane from New York, and I was exhausted, and I thought I'll just sort of close my eyes and do a meditation and just sort of settle my whole mind and body down and prepare myself for returning to Australia. So I did. And I do have an ability to actually take myself down into quite a deep state. It's just, I don't know if it's a gift. I don't know why, but it is an actual thing. I was actually once out at a fair, and a guy actually said, do you want to try this? And they put this helmet thing on my head with all these electrons and neutrons, and he said to me, take yourself to a place where you're absolutely comfortable and reaffirm your goals. And apparently I did it like really quickly, and that was all the neutrons and everything going off. So who knows where that comes from, but I do have that ability to do that. So in my trip back on the plane, I was doing that to relax myself. And in that, while I was in my state of meditation, I got these very strong words: stop, it's time to take up your own mantle. And it sort of shocked me a little bit, because it was very, very powerful and very, very strong. Mm-hmm. And I went, wow. And what does that actually mean? I wasn't, I knew what that would mean, but what does it mean really and truly, Anyway, I actually thought about it a lot, and I thought, it's time for me to resign and actually live the life I want to live my passion in expressing myself through energy in some way to make a living. So that was my first thought. So they went in and I resigned, and everybody got a bit of a shock and all that sort of stuff. And I opened up a holistic centre in Sydney. Quite a big holistic centre in Sydney. Nothing like, I'm a Capricorn, so you do things really big sometimes. So it's not really always the best thing to do, but you do. And so I opened up this big holistic centre, and we had a beautiful shop and an area there where it was a conference room. We bring people in and so on and so forth. But we were working 7 days a week and 16 hours a day, and that really wasn't my plan, because and it was beautiful and it was lovely, and you knew you were helping people, and I suppose it turned the key into opening up my world in another way. But it's interesting how you can take, when you leave corporate, you can sometimes, and it's not well, for me, it wasn't the good thing to do. You take that mindset of working hard, creating something, keeping it going into the next life if you're not careful. And that's what we actually did with our centre. So after a couple of years, I looked at my husband, I said, we're going to die here. It's just so hard, we're working so hard. And the purpose of doing that was to actually, go and sit in front of the Dalai Lama in Puttaparthi, and Dharamsala rather, and go and visit the different gurus that I'd actually had the pleasure of meeting and sitting in front of, because I had the travel in my job. So there's always a good thing comes out of it. I always made sure wherever I was going that I actually linked in with a different guru or a sacred shaman or something that I could learn from in my day while I was traveling in corporate. So so we sold that, and we came back to the Gold Coast, which was where our families came from. And my sister actually suggested that I start up my business in a market. And I thought, I don't know how to do that, because I've only gone to markets and enjoyed them. I haven't really worked in them, Anyway, I started at Carrara Market 20 years ago. And I opened up a business called Crystal and Pearl Co., which is all to do with crystals, naturally. But I also designed, because I wanted to do more, and understanding in my belief pattern. I really started my true in-depth understanding of energy at about 38, when I met my present husband, Philip, 35 years ago, I think it was. And he said, I want to follow my spiritual path. And I said, and I was madly in love with him and still am. And I said, sure, let's do that. So we went up many paths in that time. And opening up my centre, it sort of turned the key in going from corporate to actually really, truly working with energy and understanding. And you know, when you have a really deep belief, and there's some people out there that don't, or question, it makes you, well, you need to stand your own ground, and you need to be balanced, and you need to be very real in your belief pattern, or, you know, you'd get knocked over and you wouldn't get up again. So opening up that centre was very good in understanding that. And then coming to Carrara Market. And I wanted, because I have an incredible eye for colour, and also knowing and truly understanding the mineral and the frequency content of the crystal, not just because it's pretty, I then decided that I would create signature jewellery. So people sit down with me for an hour and they go through a 10 questionnaire and they eventually tell themselves what they, which I think is fabulous. You know, it's no point, we all could. When we come from a very energetic point of view, we could make suggestions, but it's how much better when it's coming from them. And so that's what I do, and I design I go away and design that jewellery piece to bring in the energy and the frequency to work with their energy so that they focus on the success that they want. And then also when I was in architecture, again, I was very lucky. I look back on my corporate life and say thank you for many of the things that I learned. And because we had Asian clients, there had to be a Feng Shui master involved in the design. And in the designs we did were $300 million high-rise buildings. But again, I was lucky. In my day, I was very young, and none of the men wanted to go and learn Feng Shui. That wasn't sort of their deal. And so my chairman asked me if I would, and I said, yes, I would. So I was sent over to Kuala Lumpur, to a Feng Shui school in Kuala Lumpur, and that's where I learned all about the principles of Feng Shui. So I learned them in a very practical sense through architecture, but then now doing my Feng Shui consulting, I actually totally bring in the energy and the flow of what the people want to have in their own life or what they want. You know, maybe they want love, and maybe they want wealth or their career. But, you know, if you know anything about Feng Shui, you have to do the whole lot. You can't just do one section because it's not. Yeah. So that's basically me.
I love it how you said that, you know, obviously having the corporate skills, and then, you know, you started your wellness center, and then obviously you've gone, you know, starting in the market. And you mentioned in there about really knowing who you are. And I find that that's probably one of my biggest lessons, is that leaving the corporate, I was so attached to my corporate identity that I didn't know who I was. So did you find that to be able to have the business and to really follow your passion, that you needed to have that full understanding to get back to your sort of true authentic self?
Absolutely. And as I explained, when I did go from corporate and we opened up the centre, that was a big lesson because, yes, I was sort of working in two worlds. I had my corporate life, which, you know, nobody wanted to know about my inner meditations or my herbal medicines or anything that I did. One of my directors did say to me once when I got a cold, I'll stop that witch doctory thing and go to the doctor. Anyway, that was another thing. But I think with opening up the centre, because you were so questioned sometimes, you know, because people, and they have a right to do so, but I found, and through our many years of study, it's been a long, long time for Philip and I've been lucky enough that we can bounce off each other because he has a very deep spiritual understanding as well, but he was in finance, so he also knew the corporate way of life as well. And but I think, you know, you got questions, so you dig deeper, so you get more questions, so you dig deeper. So in my true 100% belief is that you have to know yourself, because you might think, I'll start this other life and this other business and that will bring me in this money, and if I do this strategy plan or if I do that, you know, we've all been taught that in corporate, how to plan and you know, do all the things we have to do, ring your clients and all the things that go with it. But when you're working in energy, in Feng Shui and in my signature jewellery, it is all to do with energy. And people come to you or come to me because they trust me that I know what I'm doing, and they do follow me. I do have quite a big following, so they do follow me and see, and I'm very real. Like sometimes I put up things, oh, you know, I'm feeling a bit wobbly today or something like that, you know, because we're human. We're very human beings with all the human emotions, and we can't ride that plane high all the time. It's not possible. It's not sustainable, and it's not possible. And all those people that you see, I'm going to be a bit naughty now, but I'm going to say it, all those people that you see out there that are absolutely, totally saying they're successful forever on Facebook, probably about a quarter might be. So don't get caught in that. Run your own race. Understand who you are. If you trip and fall, take it back to yourself. Don't blame yourself. Just go, oh, okay, I'll try this again. So understanding yourself honestly is the biggest thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think one of the most important things is that you really start to uncover your strengths, and they're probably not things that you realize that you had before. And when you go into business for yourself, it's quite a very steep learning curve that you've got to, you're the brand, you're everything. And to really have that sort of resilience around yourself as well it's quite hard to sort of take on. I'm quite an emotional sort of person. Like, you know, I can be happy one moment and then be bawling my eyes out the next, you know, but I learnt to embrace that opposed to sort of being fearful of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because, oh, is that talking okay? Sounds a bit funny on the sound. Is that all right?
Yeah, it's all good.
Yep. I absolutely. Look, honest and truly, from my heart, I've sat in front of and followed and studied with some amazing people. You know, I don't like to say gurus, but they've found themselves, and they're very successful in sharing their knowledge energetically. But they will say too, you know, they might have a car accident, or they might fall down the stairs, or they might, you know, things happen. And usually it's because we're a little bit out of balance, because we've allowed something else to imbalance us, not the other way around. And so, you know, to be honest, what's the point of not acknowledging that? So, okay, well, I was a bit out of whack this time. You know, I need to just settle or step off the hurdy-go-round for a little while, you know. Just take a break, you know?
Yeah. I think live in the moment has been one of my biggest things, because being in corporate, you're constantly on the go. And, you know, I would like be planning like the whole week and be planning for a pre-meeting for another meeting. And it's just sort of like now I'm like, it's okay just to take a breath and to be in the moment and just enjoy it without the forward always thinking of everything that needs to be done.
Yeah, I agree. My sister unfortunately passed away with breast cancer, but she was such a wise person, and she actually said to me when I came up and, you know, busy being in Sydney plus corporate, all that sort of stuff, and she used to say to me, you know, before I'd be in corporate, and I'd write down my list, you know, long before we got all these smartphones and everything, write down, and there'd be about 16 or 20 that I was prepared to do for the next day, you know, and she'd say to me, write down 3 and complete 3. That's used to say, and then you'll feel satisfied. And it is true, you know. Even if you have to incorporate personal, I have to go to the post office or something like that, but they're the things I have to do today, because we tend to, with this fast world that we're in, and everyone's, you know, you've got to be careful you just don't get caught up in that wheel and still not achieve anything. That's the biggest thing that we need to look at.
Yeah, absolutely. So with using, you know, your corporate experience and then obviously into Feng Shui, do you think that people sort of really underestimate or sort of undervalue the power of that, you know, to not only in their personal life but also into business, and how that can make such a big energetic sort of effect on them as well?
Absolutely. I never realised this actually, and sometimes it's because it's naturally a part of who you are. You just think everybody knows about it, and of course Feng Shui's been around like forever. It's an ancient thing, and then there was a big sort of understanding of it in the 80s, and then sort of people got all very, you know, that's all wooey stuff. I'm not getting caught in that and all the rest of it. But then when they realise that they've actually done their planning, they've done their strategy, they've done every single thing physically and intellectually that they know to do, and it's still not flowing, then something's missing. So when I talk to them about Feng Shui, and, you know, a lot of people do know it, but there is still a lot of people that don't, because I'll say I'm a Feng Shui consultant. I'll go, what? You know, so it's still there. But I'll explain to them, like, for instance, you know, I just finished a lady's home in her actual business office, actually, in Brisbane, and just changing a few things around. You know, sure, we did the whole of the corners and all the parts, because there's knowledge and wealth and love and career and future and creativity and health and all those. So they're the principles of Feng Shui. So you have to balance and have that flow happening all the time. But just say, for instance, which I did say to her, and she had everything there. I said, I am positive that you will have every object that we need to put in placement here. And she said, oh, I don't think so. I said, I'm sure you will. And she did, because she had there and there and there, and we just moved it around. It was in the wrong spot. And so I said to her, if you're having a down day with your finances, and this is in your business, this is your center of power, because it's your office, that's where you work out of. And I say, you look over into your wealth corner, and it's all messy. It's all stuff, and it doesn't give you any excitement whatsoever. All it does is actually tell you that I've got so much work to do. How am I ever going to make it? La, 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 la. But I said, if you have in that corner something that actually represents wealth to you, whatever that is for yourself. For me, I work with crystals, so I'd have a beautiful citrine crystal or something like that, or a book or whatever. But another lady that I did her room, she was an artist. So she actually put her painting in her wealth corner of Portobello Road in London, where, you know, people are so rich that, you know, they buy the place there. So it was her creation, and it represented wealth to her. If she could live in Portobello Road, she'd have that sort of money. So all it does is actually, you know, having a bad day, you look over there, you see the crystal or you see the painting or something else that represents wealth to you, and you go, take a breath. You go, you know something, pick up the phone and talk to someone, or send someone an email, or start your ball rolling again to actually bring abundance into your life. So it's basically as simple as that. It's quite profound, but simple.
Yeah. And the way that I was fortunate to experience some of it. One of the managers I was working with in corporate, she did Feng Shui, and, you know, she, you know, said to me, oh, you know, one time you had to roll the oranges or something like that at the door. And I was like, going, what? But then it's interesting that, you know, now I really am, I think, as I've gone into business, and also I've reconnected back to myself and really know who I am, that I'm allowing more of that spirituality to come into my life. And it's really opened up so many more different avenues as well. And I now feel like I am no longer sleepwalking through life. I'm actually experiencing life and allowing the ups and downs to come through it as well.
Yeah. You know, it is true. Like I did we're just going back to signature jewelry, moving from Feng Shui a little bit. I did a signature jewelry appointment with a young woman, and she was a draftsperson in an office, and she was being made redundant. So she had to sort of look outside herself for another job, and she wanted to go into, she was into rebirthing, so it was more in the energetic world. But when we actually did the 10 most important things to her, from my, again, trained mind as an architect, she was actually writing down not just one word, she was doing a whole sort of thing, and I could see her structurally creating this 10 answers. And it was too much. It was all too confusing for her, because everyone was so structured with, you know, sort of like paragraphs of each one, instead of saying, I'm important. You know, I want love in my life. I want my business to be successful. I want to talk on stage. I want. Instead of just doing that, which is the power within yourself, she was going, and I said to her, okay, you have to be gentle. And I actually said to her, this means this, this means this, this means this. And so we've actually come to about 5 of the questions. So you've got 5 more to actually add, because the others mean the same. And she just about had a heart attack. She said, oh, my God, how am I going to do that? And I said, well, this means this. How about I write it down for you exactly as you say it? And so we did it about 3 times. And do you know, as much as her job was important to her, what came out the first was herself, because she forgot it. You know?
Yeah.
And you know yourself, if you don't work on yourself to understand, we all have our insecurities. I don't care who you are. I don't care how famous you are or how successful you are. I've heard Tony Robbins talk about an insecurity thing that he had, because somebody attacked him just recently, and he came up on YouTube and was actually taken back because they'd actually questioned his whole beingness, you know, and he was raw. He was in a hotel room and he was raw talking about it. Now, you'd think that sort of person could just let it go off the top of his head. No, it affected him because he's a human being, and we all are. So in our little insecurities that we have, but we have to go back to, who am I really? That's my greatest saying. Who am I really? And you know something, when you find out, or, you know, we're always growing and evolving anyway, but when you come to that terminology of who am I really and own that, then all those skills that you used in corporate, all those skills that you didn't know you have, come out, and you go down a path of that real fire in your belly and that passion to want to create a vehicle for you to travel in, which is your vehicle, your branding, your everything, but then to tell the world. And let me tell you, just from experience in being where I am today, people will listen when you talk like that, you know.
Yeah.
When they come out, and I'm sure you've experienced, when they come out at meetings, whatever, and they're all rah, 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 and all that stuff, and they talk about making 7-figure sums, and good on them. There's people that do. I'm not knocking that at all. But it's not everybody. So you can go away feeling quite inadequate, because you can think, I don't know if I'll ever make 7-figure sums. You know what I mean? And that's not, to me, that's not a good coach or a good lecturer. It's the one that takes you through and actually gets you there, and then you open up, and it may not be 7, it may be 6, it may be 4, but the happiness is inside yourself, and you're living the life you want to live.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I've gone from the corporate world, and now I'm actually doing what I love, and by doing that, I actually feel more fulfilled than what I've ever done. It's letting go of what I thought were materialistic things that, I really loved. And I used to wear, now I call it was my suit of armor going to work, have my heels, I have my designer handbag, like all that sort of stuff, but now I'm just like, I'm quite happy shopping at Kmart, but it's because I know who I am now, and I'm okay to allow that to reflect through. I don't need to hide behind anything else before. So I totally.
One of the funny things I did, because the same principle, I used to spend fortunes on dresses and goodness knows what, all that sort of stuff, and I used to spend a fortune on makeup and things, all Estee Lauder or whatever. So when I changed, I had all this like drawer full of it, and I used to sparingly use it because, I won't be able to afford to buy this, And you know something? When I got over that rubbish of thinking, you can go and buy anything you want, can't you? You don't have to buy the expensive, like you say. I go out and I buy something. I always do it that it's not sort of hurting animals or anything, but I'll buy makeup and it could be on sale and it could be $10 or something, instead of paying $60 for a lipstick. How ridiculously stupid is that? I'd rather go off to Nepal.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting because now I value, like my beliefs and my values have changed quite dramatically, obviously, from leaving the corporate, but that has been part of re-identifying back to who I am. And I really believe that it's one of the biggest struggles when you leave corporate is leaving that identity behind you, and to really find, and it's a scary process because you actually have to be quite raw and vulnerable with yourself and be brutally honest too. And there might be things that come up, you go, don't really like that part of me, but you still have to accept it. So
when I went out of baseball and I held that position I was saying, and then I opened up my Wholestic Centre, and then a couple of the directors must have heard about it because I just left and didn't say anything, and they came into my shop and there's crystals and this, this, and they looked and go, what is this all about? It was quite funny because, as you say, you're under an umbrella. So it's sort of like you're in a cocoon of safety, you feel. But, it's not all that safe, because in today's world, the company could collapse and you have to end up not being there, and so on and so forth. So at least in your own business, you live and die by your own sword, don't you?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it just to really learn from all the different experiences, and it is just a learning, it's personal growth on a whole new different level when you go into business for yourself, because you do have to really uncover some certain things that you might be quite uncomfortable with. But I say that business is learning about being comfortable with being uncomfortable. So you definitely need to step out of your comfort zone a lot.
It is.
Beautiful. Well, is there one, before we finish up, is there one sort of piece of advice that you would give somebody who is looking at making the transition, from corporate to either start their own business or just going down sort of that personal, development type journey of learning more about themselves that you have learnt in your own sort of personal experience?
I actually do. I wrote down all the things that I thought I wanted to do. And I actually, a little bit of mind mapping I did. And I actually wrote down, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to do. And then there was probably quite a few. There's probably about 10 or 15 things. And then without sort of getting my brain into it, I just crossed off. I just went, sup. And I ended up with about 3. And then the reason that I started, making my jewelry is, yes, I like beautiful things and whatever. And I thought, wow, if I can combine an energy in something of beauty, and a person can wear it every day with the intention that it was made, and it comes from the earth, so it physically does have mineral and frequency, not artificial colouring or, plastic or whatever. So it is actually a piece that's grown in the earth. You now got it on your wrist or your neck or wherever, in an energetic level, and you're made up of minerals and energy as well, and you can relate to that to keep you focused on where you want to go. I want to do that. So that's how it started with the jewelry. And then with the Feng Shui, I can honestly say I sort of let it bubble along, and people come, oh, will you do this, will you do that? But I never really pushed it a lot. But I'm just finding today I've got this incredible urge to bring that to the fore, because people need to understand that every single thing is energy. So, I say these words, you can intellectually strategize and plan, but energetically you will succeed. Because if something knocks us off our perch, and we've put everything into planning mode that we know from our corporate life and we've learned through the years, but we're not dealing with the frequency, which is emotion, and something happens, a man leaves us, a lady leaves us, or we lose our job, or we lose our money, or we get sick, or whatever that may be, and you haven't got the strength within yourself to say, something, I don't care, all that doesn't matter, I'm picking myself up and I'm going to continue to go. And even if those steps are just little, tiny, small steps until you get to feel comfortable again, and then go out and just do it. You know that I have lots of trouble with the digital program. It's not my forte because my head doesn't quite go there. But I persevered, I've persevered. I now can do Zoom. I now have a YouTube account. I now do my TV show. All those things happen because I've been persistent and saying, well, my package is my signature jewelry, my Feng Shui consultancies, my crystal healing, and my humanitarian projects in Nepal. And that's my package. And I don't really want to do anything else. So that's where all my energy goes into those things. Yep. So, that's for me. That's what I've found out that makes me complete and makes me feel happy. So that's energy. Every one of those things are energy. And I say to people who come to my shop and they go, oh, yeah, la, la. I say, will you go into a room, and if you feel uncomfortable, you're feeling the energy. You can't see it. It's real. So, yeah, that's my point.
It has been an absolute pleasure chatting to you today, and I just know that we'll probably have many more chats together, and that we can, you know, really be able to share people just a little bit more insight to really help them when they're during that transition, but also making that step of whether they're changing, you know, careers, or they're actually, you know, taking on their own business, and how that they can make that more of a smoother transition for them as well. So thank you so much for joining us today, Barbie.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
So I will have all the details on how you can get in contact with Barbie below. So please make sure, reach out to her. She is based in the Gold Coast, but you can actually do, you know, all around the world. She does the consults via Zoom. So please make sure you get in contact with her. Thank you everyone for joining us today on this episode of the Corporate Escapists TV show. I am your host, Christine Innes, and I look forward to speaking to you next week. Bye.